Hi, my name is Eddie Roberts from In War and Peace and Armour, and this is a new review on a casemate publication, the Waffen SS in Poland, 1939. And I would just like to welcome any new viewers to In War and Peace channel. The Waffen SS can trace its birth to March the 17th, 1933. When Josef Sepp Dietrich selected 120 men, some would say thugs, to form the Sonderkommando Berlin. Within 6 months, the unit had grown to 800 men. On April the 13th, 1934, the unit became known as SS Leibstandarte, SS Adolf Hitler, by Heinrich Himmler. A short 2 months later, the LSSAH demonstrated its unwavering loyalty to Hitler during the Night of the Long Knives, a political purge executing some 200 Sturmabteilung senior members, including the leader Ernst Röhm, one of Hitler's oldest comrades. The German invasion plan for Poland, codenamed Fall Weiss, envisaged the destruction of the Polish armed forces in the shortest possible time. Concentric attack toward the Polish capital, brought from the southwest Silesia and to the north from Pomerania and East Prussia. Speed of execution represented an important part of the plan due to the German General Staff's concern about the possible intervention of Allied powers alongside Poland, with the consequence needed to transfer troops to the Western Front to defend themselves from a possible French attack. For the new offensive, the German forces were divided into 2 army groups. Army Group North under General Fedor von Bock, including the 3rd and 4th Armies, and Army Group South under General Gerd von Rundstedt, comprising the 8th, 10th and 14th Armies and the Slovak Army Group Bernalac. On the 1st of September 1939, at 4:45 in the morning, the Germans launched their armies in a grandiose encirclement manoeuvre, showing the entire world the efficiency of the Blitzkrieg, the lightning war, based on the use of powerful rapid strikes by motorized units supported by aircraft attacking in front of the troops. Luftwaffe planes carried out their dual task of hitting targets on the ground and destroying the Polish Air Force. During the first 2 days of the war, Polish airfields were bombed and any aircraft still there were destroyed. Heavy air attacks also launched against the road and rail networks, as well as against administrative and industrial centres. The superiority of the Luftwaffe over the Polish Air Force was evident from day 1 of the war. On September the 5th, the German forces had already broken the cordon of Polish troops deployed along the border, while the 10th Army was creating a gap in the direction of Warsaw from the south. On the 6th to 10th of September, German units continued their march in the directions of Warsaw. The 3rd and 4th Armies of the Army Group North were pressing in the direction of the capital, while the 8th and 10th Armies of Army Group South headed north towards Warsaw and the Radom area. The attack on September 9th, along with the Bezura River, was the only large-scale counter-offensive carried out by any vigour by Poles, who struck at the centre of the German deployment that was facing limited combat action. However, Generals Gerd von Rundstedt and Erich von Manstein, by having their forces create a diversion and bringing forward reserve troops, engaged their opponents in a difficult battle on a narrow front, beating them comprehensively. Meanwhile, Elements of Army Group South were starting to assault the Polish capital as other Wehrmacht units continued fighting along the Bzara River. Gordion's armoured corps advanced to Brest-Litovsk, which fell on September the 14th. These forces would soon link with the Ludwig von Kleist's armoured units from the south. On September 17, 1939, units of the Red Army, according to the terms stipulated in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of the previous August, in turn entered Poland from the east, putting an end to any Polish hopes. 2 days later, 100,000 men of the Poznan army surrendered to Army Group South. Warsaw resisted for another 8 days, but the campaign could already be considered over. The attack on the Polish post office. The Polish post office in Danzig was created in 1919 under the Treaty of Versailles. Its building were to be regarded as a Polish extraterritorial support. In 1930, the Gdańsk first building on Helvetoire Plaza in the old city became the main post office, with a direct telephone line to Poland in 1939. Quite possibly one of the most terrifying noises and sounds from World War II, that of a Stuka already in a dive and about to drop its payload. Approximately 100 employees served in the office, many of them were part of the Polish paramilitary organisations and were responsible for the safety of the personnel. As relations with Germany became increasingly strained, the Polish High Command moved the reserve officer Konrad Gudecki into the office, taking him with him and organising the defences around the Polish buildings. At 4 o'clock on September the 1st, 1939, the Germans cut the telephone and power lines to the Polish office buildings. When the battleship Schleswig-Holstein began opening fire, the assault on the post office also began. The German units involved in the attack included special units of the Danzig police and SS units such as SS Heimwehr Danzig. The SS Heimwehr Danzig units counted on the support of the Austrian ADGZ armoured cars, on which they had painted the skull and double runes. Each vehicle was named after German provinces such as Ostermark and Sudetenland. Field operations were led by German police Colonel Willy Bethke. The first German assault, launched head-on, was repelled. The Germans attempted to force the main building entrance without success. A second attack, carried out on the flanks, was again repelled, but during this second firefight, the Polish commander Konrad Gudecki was killed. Around 11 o'clock AM, the Germans sent 2 7.5 centimetre artillery pieces to the scene, which immediately began pounding the Polish building and defences. However, despite this, artillery support and a fresh assault was still repelled. At around 3 o'clock, the Germans announced a 2-hour truce, simultaneously demanding a Polish surrender. Having received a negative response from the Poles, they resumed the attack, while a 10.5 centimetre artillery piece and an engineering unit arrived on site and began placing explosive charges around the building. At 5 o'clock, a charge of around 600 kilograms of explosives was detonated, causing part of the wall around the post office to collapse. Immediately afterwards, some German pioneers went into action with flamethrowers, and it was at that point the Poles raised the white flag. In March 1939, a German ultimatum to Lithuania led Germany's annexation of the nearby Lithuanian coast. Klaipeda region. Subsequently, the Westerplatte garrison was placed on alert, fearing a possible Nazi coup d'etat in Danzig. The Poles decided secretly to reinforce their garrison and resorted in subterfuge. Civilians in Polish army uniform would leave the base and new Polish soldiers would enter. By late August 1939, the Poles had reinforced their 88-man garrison, though its strength is still debated. Older sources speak of 182 men, but more recent research suggests something in the range of 210 to 240, including 6 officers. Major Henryk Sucharski, his second in command, Captain Franciszek Dąbrowski, Captain Mieczysław Slaby, Lieutenant Leon Pajak, Lieutenant Stefan Ludwik Gradecki, Second Lieutenant Zdzisław Gregielski. Estimates include some 20 mobilised citizens and about 10 regular troops who happened to be on site when the fighting began, in addition to light arms consisting of pistols, grenades and about 160 rifles. Weaponry included a 75mm field gun, 2 Bofors 37 anti-tank guns, 4 81mm mortars and about 40 machine guns, including 18 heavy machine guns. Field fortifications were extended, more trenches were dug, wooden barricades were built, barbed wire was strung into wire obstacles, and reinforced concrete shelters were built into the basements of the barracks. Foliage was thinned out to reduce cover on the expected avenues of attack. The Polish defence, which anticipated principally a German land-based assault, rested on 3 lines of defence. The outer line included entrenched outposts codenamed Prom. On the 25th of August 1939, the German pre-dreadnought battleship Schleswig-Holstein, under the pretext of making a courtesy call, sailed into the Danzig harbour, anchoring 150 metres from Westerplatte. On board was Marine Strosstop Company, Marine Shock Troop Company of 225 Marines under Lieutenant Wilhelm Henningsen. On land, the Germans had the SS Heimwehr Danzig, a force of 1,500 men under Police General Friedrich Georg Eberhard. But in overall command was Captain Gustav Kleikamp. Initially, the Marines were ordered to attack on the morning of the 26th of August 1939. On that day, Kleikamp moved the battleship further upstream, and as a result, Sucharski put his garrison on heightened alert. Shortly before the German disembarkation, the orders were rescinded as Adolf Hitler had postponed hostilities on learning of the Polish-British Common Defence Pact, signed the day before on the 25th of August, and that Italy was hesitant about obligations under the Pact of Steel. On the early morning of September the 1st, 1939, the Schleswig-Holstein fired a broadside at the Polish garrison. The salvo's time has been variously stated as 4:45, 4:47, 4:48. Polish historian Jaroslaw Tuliska explains that at 4:45 was the planned time, 4:47 was the time the order was given by Kleikamp, and at 4:48 was the time when the guns actually fired. Shortly after, on Westerplatte, Sucharski radioed the nearby Polish military base on the Hel Peninsula. "SOS, I'm under fire. Other sources indicate that the shot was fired at 4 o'clock in the morning rather than that of 4:45. The battleship's initial bombardment was not very successful, failing to inflict a single casualty among the defenders, as due to the battleship's proximity, its heavier shells did not have time to arm and they did not explode upon impact. 8 minutes later, Henningsen's Marines from the Schleswig-Holstein, who had disembarked 2 hours earlier on the eastern side of the peninsula, advanced, expecting an easy victory over the Poles. However, after crossing the artillery-breached brick wall at the border, advancing about 200 metres and engaging the Polish Prom outpost, the Germans ran into an ambush. They found themselves in a kill zone of Polish crossfire from concealed firing positions, while barbed wire entanglements impeded their movements. At around 5:15, the field gun commanded by Pajek opened intense fire on the advancing Germans, firing 28 rounds and knocking out several machine gun nests atop of the warehouse across the harbour canal. Meanwhile, the German infantry was also shelled by the Polish mortars, and even the battleship itself was targeted by the Polish 37mm guns. Around that time, the Poles also repulsed an attempt by a small maritime unit of the Danzig police to land on the western side of the depot. In that initial engagement, Poles sustained 2 casualties, and a Polish soldier, Staff Sergeant Wojciech Nazarek, was killed by machine gun fire. Nazarek has been described as the first Polish combat casualty of the battle and perhaps the war. At 06:22 hours, the German Marines frantically radioed the battleship they had sustained heavy losses and were withdrawing. Casualties were approximately 50 Germans and 8 Poles, mostly wounded. A longer bombardment from the battleship, lasting between 7:40 in the evening and 5 to 9, proceeded a second attack and succeeded at knocking the Polish field gun out. The Germans assaulted again at 8:35 to 12:30, but encountered mines, felled trees, barbed wire and intense fire. By noon, the Germans retreated. Henningsen had been gravely wounded. Eberhardt requested air support, but it was delayed due to bad weather over Westerplatte. On the first day's combat, the Polish side had sustained 4 killed and several wounded. The German Marines had lost 16 killed and 120 wounded. In the following days, the Germans bombarded Westerplatte Peninsula with naval and heavy field artillery, including 105mm howitzer battery and 210mm howitzers. On the 2nd September, from 1805 to 1825, a 2-wave air raid by 60 Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers dropped 26.5 tons of bombs, eliminating the Polish mortars, destroying the Guardhouse 5 with a 500kg bomb, and killing at least 8 Polish soldiers. The air raid shrouded all of Westerplatte in clouds of smoke and destroyed the Poles' only radio and much of its food rations. According to some German sources, after the air raid, the Poles briefly displayed a white flag, but not all historians are convinced of this. At 9:45 AM on September 1939, a white flag appeared. The Polish defence had so impressed the Germans that their commander, Eberhardt, initially let Sucharski keep his ceremonial Szybla Polish sabre in captivity, although it would be confiscated later. Sucharski surrendered the post to Gleikamp, and the Germans stood at attention as the Polish garrison marched out at 11:30. Over 3,000 Germans, including soldiers and support formations such as the Danzig police, had been tied up in a week-long operation against a small Polish garrison. About half the Germans, 570 on land and over 900 at sea, had taken part in direct action. German casualties totaled 50 killed, 16 from the Kriegsmarine and 150 wounded. The Poles lost 15 men and sustained at least 40 wounded. This offering from Casemate, I feel, is an extremely well written and thought out book from author Massimiliano Fierro. It is 128 pages, 7 by 10 inches, more than 150 photographs and maps, and I would just like to say a massive thank you to Casemate for these samples for the review. This book is really a treasure trove of information about the invasion of Poland in 1939, and it just goes to show you how, lacking in numbers, the Polish fought a very brave fight. I am AD Roberts from In War and Peace and Armour, and you have been listening to the starting battle on September the 1st, 1939 against the Polish. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed explaining the things that went on, and if you have, don't forget to press like and subscribe, because there'll be plenty more videos coming up. And above all else, we get to that time. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe, much magic, and of course happy modelling. And I'll see you in the next video.